Hi, my name is Chloe Evans. I'm a mother, a veteran, and someone who once came home from war thinking the hardest battle of my life was already behind me. I was wrong, because the day I returned injured, unable to walk, and desperate to hold my baby boy again, my husband handed me divorce papers and told me he didn't marry someone he'd have to take care of. For 9 years, I raised my son alone while he disappeared. Then, out of nowhere, he came back. Not to apologize, not to be a father, but to take my child from me. And in that courtroom, when he tried to use my scars against me, one sentence from my military file changed everything. It was the whisper that broke the silence of the entire courtroom, and it shattered my ex-husband's world. "No," he breathed, his voice cracking. "That's not possible." But it was. And the truth I thought was long buried was about to drag him into the light. He'd spent 2 days and a mountain of money trying to paint me as a broken, unstable veteran, unfit to be a mother because of the scars I brought home from war. His slick attorney stood beside him, oozing confidence. His new wife, the woman he'd had an affair with, sat in the gallery, her arms crossed, a smug smirk plastered on her face. They thought they had me. They thought my wounds were my weakness. Then, the judge opened my military file. She quietly adjusted her glasses, her eyes scanning the page. She read one sentence. Just one. And that's all it took. Every ounce of color drained from my ex-husband Leo's face, like he'd been bled dry in an instant. "No," he whispered again, shaking his head. "That's not possible." The judge slowly looked up from the page, her gaze landing on him like a physical weight. "It appears," she said, her voice dangerously calm, "that this court has been given an incomplete picture." And in that moment, for the first time in almost 10 years, I saw real fear in Leo's eyes. Not fear of me, fear of the truth. The funny thing is, I never tried to hide it. He just never cared enough to look. 9 years earlier, I didn't come home looking like a hero. I came home in pieces, a puzzle of a person I didn't recognize. The military transport touched down on a gray October afternoon. I barely remember it. The pain medication had turned the world into a blurry watercolor painting. I remember the smell of antiseptic clinging to my clothes, the dead weight of my left leg caged in metal braces, the throbbing ache in my ribs that made every breath a battle. I remember looking out that tiny window and thinking how impossibly green everything was, a world away from the dust and sand. But mostly, I remember the one thought that kept me going. I was finally coming home to my husband and my baby boy. Our son, Sam, was only 3 months old. I'd kissed his tiny forehead, memorizing his scent, before leaving for what was supposed to be a short, simple deployment. Instead, everything changed. Our convoy was hit during a humanitarian mission. I remember pulling 2 young soldiers, kids really, from a burning vehicle. Then an explosion. Blackness. I woke up to a world of pain. Broken ribs, a shattered pelvis, my left knee completely destroyed. The doctor said I'd walk again, but it would be a long, brutal road. A road I truly believe my family and I would walk together. I couldn't have been more wrong. Leo met me at Walter Reed. He brought flowers, the kind you buy at a hospital gift shop because you're supposed to. He smiled for the cameras, held my hand when the nurses were watching, even kissed my forehead for show. And I, floating on a cloud of morphine and hope, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. I had no idea he'd already checked out. 2 days later, he walked into my new hospital room closer to home. He was holding a plain manila envelope. He didn't sit. He didn't ask how physical therapy was going. He didn't ask if I needed anything. He just placed the envelope on the thin hospital blanket covering my legs. "I've already signed everything," he said. I frowned, confused. "What is it?" "The divorce papers." For a second, I was sure the medication was making me hallucinate. "What?" "I can't do this anymore, Chloe." I just stared at him. "We have a baby." "I know." "Leo, I'm still in the hospital." "I know. I can't even stand up on my own." He finally looked away, and then he said the words that have been burned into my memory ever since. I didn't marry someone I'd have to spend the rest of my life taking care of. The room went silent. I searched his face, desperate to find even a flicker of guilt, of regret, of the man I married. There was nothing. Just a stranger looking at me like I was a problem he was solving. "What about Sam?" I whispered. "I'll send child support. You haven't even held him this week. He'll be better off without all this." He gestured vaguely at my wheelchair, my braces at me. For years, I tortured myself wondering if he regretted saying that. Now, sitting in this courtroom, I knew. He meant every single word. My older brother, Ben, was the one who brought me home 3 days after I was discharged. Leo was gone. His side of the closet was empty. Half the furniture had vanished. The family photos were gone from the walls. He hadn't just left me, he'd erased us. The only thing he left was a folder from his attorney on the kitchen counter. Later that day, a neighbor came over with a casserole and a heavy heart. She hesitated, then said, "I wasn't sure if anyone told you. I saw Leo yesterday. He was moving into a condo downtown." She paused. He wasn't alone. I just nodded. Somehow I already knew. A week later, another military spouse sent me a photo. A candid shot from a restaurant. It was Leo, laughing, holding hands with a woman from his office, the one he always swore was just a coworker. The timestamp on the picture was from before I was even injured. The affair wasn't a reaction to my injuries. My injuries were just his excuse to stop hiding it. Meanwhile, my life became a grueling routine. Pain meds, excruciating physical therapy, learning to move from my bed to my wheelchair without dropping my infant son, trying not to scream when my ribs felt like they were on fire every time I lifted him. My VA therapist once asked me what I was most afraid of. The answer surprised even me. That my son will grow up believing his father left because of me. Because I wasn't enough. She looked at me for a long moment and said something that became my lifeline. "Children don't remember who walked away, Chloe. They remember who stayed." That sentence got me through the darkest nights. Nights I slept sitting up because the pain was too much to lie down. Nights Sam screamed with colic for hours while I shuffled behind a walker, my legs shaking, praying I wouldn't collapse. There were so many moments I wanted to give up, moments I wondered if Leo had been right. Then Sam would wrap his tiny, perfect fingers around mine. And suddenly, I had a reason to stand up again. Literally, every agonizing step in rehab became a promise, not to prove Leo wrong, but to make sure my son never, ever doubted that someone would always fight for him. I had survived a battlefield. This was just a different kind of war. They say time heals all wounds. That's a lie. It doesn't. It just gives you scars, and you have to decide how you're going to live with them. For me, healing wasn't about time. It was measured in tiny, invisible victories. The first time I stood up without someone there to catch me. The first time I walked across the living room with just a cane. The first morning I lifted Sam from his crib without crying out in pain. Nobody gave me a medal for those moments, but they were the battles that mattered most. Every day started before sunrise. I'd ease myself out of bed, my hand braced on the nightstand until my left leg decided to cooperate. The doctors were right, I walked again. But it was never the same. Cold mornings are a constant reminder of every fracture. Rain makes my knee ache with a phantom pain I'll have for the rest of my life. Still I walk. After I'd get Sam fed, my brother Ben would stop by on his way to work. "You good?" he'd ask every single morning. "I'm good," I'd lie. "You sure?" "No." That became our little joke. He'd laugh, kiss Sam on the forehead, and quietly fix whatever was broken in the house, never making me feel like the burden Leo had seen me as. My parents, 2,000 miles away in Arizona, called every single night. My mom sent care packages filled with cookies and socks. My dad read bedtime stories over video chat until Sam was old enough to recognize his voice. Slowly, our broken little unit of 3 started to feel whole again. After almost 18 months, I was medically retired from the Army. Handing over my ID felt like giving up a piece of my soul. The Army had been my life since I was 22. Now, who was Chloe Evans? But my old CO, Colonel Hayes, refused to let me just fade away. She called me one afternoon. "I hear you've been sitting at home too long, Evans." "I have a 4-year-old, ma'am," I laughed. "So do half the people at the Pentagon. I'm not asking you to relocate." She offered me a civilian contractor job in Raleigh. It wasn't glamorous. No deployments, no rank. But it was a way to use my skills and still be home to put my son to bed every night. I took it in a heartbeat. Money was tight. I sold my big SUV for a reliable old sedan. Our little townhouse wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. It was ours. Leo paid his child support like clockwork. And that was it. No birthday cards. No Christmas calls. Years went by. Sam rarely even mentioned him. When he was finally old enough to ask the hard questions, I promised myself I would never poison him against his father. One evening, he curled up next to me on the couch. "Mom, why doesn't my dad come see me?" The innocence of it just broke my heart. I pulled him close. "Listen to me, buddy. There is nothing in this world wrong with you." "Then why?" "Sometimes," I said, choosing my words carefully. Grown-ups make selfish decisions. "He made a bad choice. There was a difference, and I prayed one day he'd understand it." And years passed. I watched Sam grow into the kind of kid you pray for. Kind, respectful, empathetic. He held doors for strangers. Every Veterans Day, he'd insist on putting flowers on the local memorial. He became obsessed with military history, devouring books about heroes. One morning, he looked at me and asked, "Mom, were you scared?" "When, buddy? When you were deployed?" I smiled. "Every single day." His eyes went wide. "Really? Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," I told him. "It means you do the right thing anyway." I could almost see that lesson planting itself in his heart. Meanwhile, Leo's life, at least on social media, looked perfect. I tried not to pay attention until one afternoon. Everything changed again. At Sam's 4th grade award ceremony, his teacher pulled me aside. "Mrs. Evans, I wanted you to know Sam has been nominated for the Carolina Junior Leadership Academy." I'd never even heard of it. That night I looked it up. An incredibly selective program. Leadership training, scholarships, mentorship from retired officers. It was a huge deal. Sam worked his tail off on the application. When the acceptance letter came, he burst through the door, waving it like a lottery ticket. "I got in! I got in!" I hugged him so tight. I was so incredibly proud. Neither of us had any idea that someone else was also paying attention. Exactly 3 weeks later, a certified letter arrived. I opened it right there in the kitchen. The first line made my stomach drop to the floor. Petition for full custody. Leo wasn't asking to visit his son. He was trying to take him from me. As I kept reading, the ugly truth became clear. This wasn't about fatherhood. This was about winning. And you know, if you're still with me on this journey, and you believe in the power of fighting back, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Because what happens next is a battle you won't want to miss. I must have read that petition 10 times. Sole legal and physical custody. After 9 years of almost complete silence, he wanted to rip my son away from me. I just stood there, the kettle screaming on the stove, until Sam walked in. "Mom, everything okay?" I forced a smile, folding the papers. "Yeah, buddy. Just work." The second I heard his bedroom door close, I let myself break. I wasn't crying because I was afraid I'd lose. I was crying because after all this time, Leo had the audacity to decide he finally deserved to be called a father. The next morning, I was in the office of Sarah Jennings, a family law attorney a friend had recommended. She read the petition, her face unreadable. Finally, she looked up and sighed. "This isn't really about custody, is it? He waited 9 years, I said. "I know." She tapped a paragraph with her pen. "Here's the real reason. The filing claimed my combat injuries left me physically limited and that I suffered from emotional instability. It argued that Sam would have a more stable home environment with his father." I let out a bitter laugh. "A stable home? With the man who abandoned his family? We're going to need documentation," Sarah said. "I've got it all," I told her. "Medical records, VA evaluations, employment history. My son's teachers love me." She leaned forward. "Chloe, have you ever once lied about your medical condition or hidden anything from a court?" "Never." She smiled, a small, fierce thing. "Good. Then let's go to war." But I knew truth doesn't always win easily. In the depositions, Leo's lawyer was relentless, trying to twist my service into a weapon. "Mrs. Evans, do loud noises still startle you?" "Sometimes." "Do you experience nightmares?" "Occasionally." "So you admit your combat experiences continue to affect you?" "They affect my memories," I corrected him. "I remember everything. But I have never, not for 1 second, neglected my son. He changed tactics. You still walk with a limp, correct?" "Yes." "Can you run?" I looked him dead in the eye. "No. But if my son were in danger, my body would hurt afterward. But I'd still get to him first." He had no more questions after that. We found out Leo's real angle by accident. My brother Ben ran into one of Leo's coworkers. Apparently, Leo had been bragging all over his office that his son was accepted into the prestigious Leadership Academy, talking about military academy recommendations and scholarships. It all clicked into place. He didn't want to raise Sam. He wanted to claim him like a trophy. He wanted to rewrite history with himself as the hero. The realization didn't even hurt anymore. It just confirmed what I already knew. He was still the same selfish man I'd left in that hospital room. The trial began on a bright spring morning. Leo arrived looking like $1 million in a tailored suit, his wife dripping with pearls. They were the picture of success. I walked in with a single, worn leather folder. Inside were 9 years of truth. Judge Miller was all business. Leo's lawyer went first, painting me as a fragile, disabled veteran. He used the word disabled like a weapon. Each time I just made a note. When it was our turn, Sarah didn't attack Leo. She calmly built a fortress of facts, employment records, medical evaluations showing my stability, school reports, teacher testimonials. One by one, they painted a picture of a mother who was dependable, patient, and always present. Then Leo took the stand. "I've always loved my son," he said confidently. Sarah stood up. "When was the last birthday party you attended?" Silence. "The last parent-teacher conference?" Silence. "What is your son's favorite subject in school?" Leo hesitated. Science." "It's history," Sarah said flatly. "What size shoe does he wear?" No answer. "What food is he allergic to?" Leo looked helplessly at his lawyer. I don't remember." Sarah just thanked him and sat down. The damage was done. Judge Miller reviewed the exhibits. "I see repeated references to Mrs. Evans's military service," she said, looking at Leo's attorney. "Has the court received her complete military record?" "No, Your Honor." "I'd like to see it." The courtroom went dead silent. A clerk brought in a sealed file. The judge broke the seal and began to read. Page after page of my service history, promotions, evaluations. Leo actually looked relaxed. He thought the file would prove his point, that I was injured. He had no idea what else was in there. Then, the judge stopped. She wasn't even halfway through. Her eyes rested on a single paragraph. She read it once. Then again. She looked up at me. "Mrs. Evans, was this portion of your file ever classified?" "Yes, Your Honor. It has since been declassified." "I see," she nodded. Across the room, I saw Leo shift in his chair, a flicker of unease finally crossing his face. "I am going to read one sentence into the record," the judge announced. She took a breath. Despite sustaining multiple life-threatening injuries, Lieutenant Colonel Chloe Evans repeatedly refused evacuation until every soldier and civilian under her protection had been safely evacuated. Military psychological evaluations conducted afterward unanimously concluded that her decision-making under extreme stress remained exemplary, and that she demonstrated extraordinary judgment, emotional stability, and unwavering devotion to those in her care. Silence. The words just hung there in the air. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, Leo was ghost white. His mouth was hanging open. "No," he whispered, his eyes locked on me. That's not possible." The judge looked directly at him. His lawyer, looking completely blindsided, stammered, "Your Honor, I was never provided the complete record." The judge just raised an eyebrow. "Interesting." The lawyer frantically flipped through his own copy, his face falling with every page he turned. He finally closed the file, took off his glasses, and just rubbed his forehead. That single, quiet gesture said it all. Their case had just imploded. The judge wasn't finished. She turned to Leo. "You have argued that Mrs. Evans's injuries rendered her incapable," she said. "Yet the United States Army concludes the exact opposite." She then went through 9 years of school records, parent conferences, and doctor's appointments. "I have found no evidence that Mrs. Evans has ever failed to place her son's needs ahead of her own," she stated. She paused, her gaze like steel. "I have, however, found substantial evidence that you voluntarily chose not to participate in your son's life for nearly a decade." Then, she did something I didn't expect. She smiled gently at my son, who was sitting quietly with a court advocate. "Sam, do you love your mother?" Sam looked surprised by the question. "More than anybody." "Does she take good care of you?" "Every day." "What do you want this court to know?" Sam hesitated for just a second, and then, with the simple, brutal honesty that only a 10-year-old has, he said, "My mom never quit. The air left my lungs. My leg got hurt playing baseball last year," he continued, glancing at me. "Mom carried me into the emergency room, even though her own leg was hurting." His voice cracked. "She always says soldiers don't leave people behind. And she never left me behind either." Tears were streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, tears of vindication. Every painful step, every lonely night, it all led to this. My son saw me. He really saw me. Judge Miller took off her glasses. When she looked back at Leo, her voice was quiet but filled with disappointment. "Mr. Carter, there is a significant difference between becoming interested in a child and becoming a parent." For the first time, Leo lowered his head in shame. He had absolutely nothing left to say. The judge delivered her final ruling. "Parenthood," she said, looking straight at Leo, "is measured by consistent love, sacrifice, and presence, not biology alone. You cannot disappear during the difficult years and return only when the rewards become attractive." She turned to me. "Your military injuries have not diminished your ability to parent. In fact, the evidence suggests they strengthened your commitment to your son." And then, she looked back at Leo. "Therefore, the petition for sole custody is denied." He closed his eyes. The judge wasn't quite done. She ordered a gradual, supervised visitation schedule. "It will not begin with custody," she told him. "It will begin with trust." Outside, in the sunshine, my brother Ben wrapped me in a hug so tight it felt like the one he gave me when I first came home from deployment. "I told you," he whispered. "No one was taking that boy from you." Then I heard footsteps. It was Leo. He stood a few feet away, looking older, smaller. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice raw. "I was selfish. I was a coward. I convinced myself leaving was easier." "It was," I said simply. He looked at Sam, his voice cracking. "I kept telling myself I'd have time later. 9 years just disappeared." I knelt down beside Sam. "You heard everything, buddy. What do you think?" He looked at his father, his face serious. "You hurt my mom." "I know," Leo whispered. "You hurt me too." "I know." Then my son, my amazing, incredible son, said something I will never, ever forget. "I don't forgive people because they deserve it." He glanced at me. "My mom taught me forgiveness is something you choose." Real tears, not the courtroom kind, streamed down Leo's face. "I'd like to get to know you," Sam continued. "But slowly, as slowly as you need," Leo choked out. "That was the beginning. Not of a perfect family. Those don't exist. It was the beginning of an honest one." Leo showed up. Awkwardly at first, but consistently. He started rebuilding trust, one painful conversation at a time. One day, he admitted something to me. "When the judge read your record," he said, "I realized I'd spent years telling myself you were the broken one. But the truth is, I was the one who ran. I didn't need to say anything. Life had already said it for me." Today, Sam is getting ready for college. And I know, looking back, the greatest victory wasn't winning in court. It wasn't proving Leo wrong. It was raising a son who understands that true strength isn't about who you defeat. It's about the character you build, the compassion you show, and the people you refuse to leave behind. So, I have to ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you had to find a strength you didn't know you had? What would you have done in my shoes? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to know.